The champagne glass felt heavy in my hand as I watched my wife of 15 years stand up at our anniversary dinner. Lena looked radiant in that emerald dress I'd bought her last Christmas, her auburn hair catching the candlelight of Romano's finest private dining room. Our daughter Emma sat beside me, barely looking up from her phone, while my in-laws beamed with pride at their golden child. "I want to make a toast," Lena announced, her voice carrying that confident architect's authority that had first attracted me. The room went quiet, except for the soft jazz playing overhead. "I'm Jake Morrison, by the way. 42 years old, owner of Morrison Construction, the guy who builds the dreams that people like my wife design. Not glamorous, but honest work that pays for nights like this one." "To 15 wonderful years," Lena continued, raising her glass. "And to Jake, who's been such an important part of my journey. My starter husband will always hold a special place in my heart." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Starter husband. The entire table froze. Even Emma looked up from her screen, her 17-year-old face showing genuine shock for once. "Excuse me?" I managed to croak out. Lena's face flushed red as she realized what she'd said. I meant my first husband, my only husband. Sorry, I've been working too many late nights at the firm." But the damage was done. Her parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. The waiter hovering nearby suddenly found the floor fascinating. Emma actually put her phone down completely. I stood up slowly, my napkin falling to the floor. "Well, that's certainly honest." "Jake, please sit down. It was just a slip of the tongue." "Was it?" I looked around the table at these people I'd called family for over a decade, because it sounded pretty deliberate to me. Without another word, I walked out of Romano's, leaving behind the expensive dinner, the confused silence, and what remained of my marriage. The cool Maine evening air hit my face as I climbed into my pickup truck, my hands shaking as I started the engine. That night, lying alone in our king-size bed while Lena stayed at her sister's house, to let things cool down, I stared at the ceiling and replayed every moment of the past few months. The late nights at the office, the mysterious phone calls she'd take in the other room, the way she'd started dressing differently, wearing perfume to work meetings. My phone buzzed with a text from Rick, my best friend since high school. "Heard about dinner. Come by the alley tomorrow. We need to talk." Rick owned Sunset Bowling, a dive that had seen better days but served the coldest beer in Portland. He was also a former cop who'd quit the force after 20 years, citing too much politics and not enough justice. If anyone would give me straight answers, it was Rick. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The next morning, I found myself sitting in Rick's cramped office behind the bowling alley, nursing my second cup of coffee while he studied me with those sharp gray eyes that had interrogated countless suspects. "So she called you her starter husband," Rick said, leaning back in his creaky chair, "in front of her parents and your kid. Pretty much sums it up. And you think she's cheating." It wasn't a question. Rick had always been able to read people like open books. "I don't know what to think anymore," I admitted. "Maybe I'm being paranoid." "Jake, in 20 years of police work, I learned that gut feelings are usually right, especially when it comes to cheating spouses." He leaned forward. "What's your plan?" "I don't have a plan. I don't even know if there's anything to plan for." Rick shook his head. "That's your problem right there. You're playing defense when you should be gathering intelligence. You want to know the truth? Then find it." That afternoon, I did something I'd never done in 15 years of marriage. I went through Lena's things, not proud of it, but Rick's words kept echoing in my head. I started with her home office, a pristine space filled with architectural drawings and awards from the firm. Her laptop was password protected, but I knew Lena well enough to guess. Emma's birthday plus her own initials. Bingo. What I found made my stomach turn. Email threads with someone named Mark discussing our situation and when we can be together properly. Hotel receipts from the Eastland Park, charged to her company credit card on days she claimed to be at client meetings. Photos that definitely weren't architectural blueprints. Mark, I knew that name. Mark Stevens, the hotshot real estate developer who'd been partnering with Lena's firm on several high-end projects. 40 years old, divorced, drove a silver Porsche, and apparently had been driving my wife as well. I printed everything and stuffed it into a folder, my hands shaking with rage and something else. Something colder, more calculating. That evening, Lena came home acting like nothing had happened. She kissed my cheek, asked about my day, and started preparing dinner as if she hadn't humiliated me in front of our family less than 24 hours ago. "We need to talk," I said, sitting at the kitchen counter. "About last night? Jake, I already apologized. It was a stupid mistake." "Was it?" Because I'm starting to think it was the most honest thing you've said in months. She paused in chopping vegetables, her back still to me. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know about Mark. The knife clattered to the cutting board. Lena turned around slowly, her face pale, but her eyes defiant. I don't know what you think you know. I know about the hotels, the emails, the photos. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the printed screenshots. I know about all of it. For a moment, I thought she might deny it, might break down and beg for forgiveness. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. Fine. Yes, Mark and I are involved. We have been for 6 months. The casual way she said it hit harder than any emotional breakdown would have, like she was discussing a business transaction. 6 months, I repeated. Jake, we've been growing apart for years. You know it, I know it. We're different people now. So you decided to cheat instead of talking to me about it. I decided to find someone who appreciates me, someone who understands my ambitions. And what about Emma? What about our family? Emma's almost 18. She'll understand eventually. And as for our family, she shrugged. Maybe it's time we stop pretending we're happy. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling again, but this time was different. The hurt was still there, but it was being overtaken by something else, something that felt like ice water in my veins. Lena wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd forgotten one important thing about construction work. Before you can build something new, you have to tear down what's already there, and I was very good at demolition. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Instead of heading to the construction site, I drove to Mark Stevens' downtown apartment building. Lena had left early for a client breakfast, but I knew better now. Mark lived in Harborview Towers, one of those glass and steel monuments to success that I'd helped build but could never afford to live in. The kind of place that screamed, "I'm better than you," to guys like me. I parked across the street and waited. Sure enough, at 8:47 a.m., Lena's BMW pulled out of the underground garage. She didn't see me, too busy checking her reflection in the rearview mirror. Rick had taught me a few things about surveillance during our friendship. The key, he'd said over beers one night, is patience. People get comfortable, sloppy. They start thinking they're invisible. At 9:15, Mark emerged from the building in his expensive suit, climbing into that silver Porsche like he owned the world. Maybe he thought he did. Maybe he thought he owned my wife, too. I followed him to Lena's architectural firm, watching as he strutted through the front doors like he belonged there. Through the large windows, I could see him greeting my wife with a kiss that lasted too long for business partners. That's when the plan started forming. I drove to Harbor Hardware, the store where I'd been buying supplies for 20 years. Old Pete behind the counter knew me well enough not to ask questions when I purchased a few unusual items. Sugar, super glue, a small crowbar. Nothing illegal, just tools of the trade. Working on something special, Jake? Pete asked as he rang me up. You could say that. Home improvement project. That afternoon, while Mark was busy at his office and Lena was at a genuine client meeting, I returned to Harborview Towers. The parking garage had decent security, but I'd installed systems like it. Every system has weaknesses if you know where to look. The Porsche sat in its designated spot like a silver trophy. Mark even had a personalized parking sign. M. Stevens, reserved. The arrogance was almost beautiful in its completeness. I popped the hood using the crowbar, careful not to leave scratches. The sugar went into the gas tank, an old trick that doesn't actually ruin engines but creates impressive mechanical problems. The superglue went into the door locks. Nothing permanent, nothing that couldn't be fixed, but expensive and embarrassing. For the finishing touch, I placed a small note under his windshield wiper. Karma is a construction worker. A concerned citizen. The next morning, I got the call from Lena while I was actually at a job site, installing kitchen cabinets for a young couple buying their first home. Jake, something terrible happened to Mark's car last night. Really? What kind of terrible? I kept my voice neutral while measuring cabinet hinges. Someone vandalized it. Sugar in the gas tank, glued the locks. It's going to cost thousands to repair. That's awful. Any idea who might have done it? The police think it might be random. You know how downtown can be. Yeah, real shame. These criminals have no respect for other people's property. There was a pause. Jake, you wouldn't what, Lena? Vandalize some stranger's car? Why would I do that? He's not a stranger. He's my business partner. Right. Your business partner. I forgot. After she hung up, I continued installing cabinets, whistling softly. The young husband, Tommy, was helping me hold pieces in place. You seem pretty happy today, Mr. Morrison, he said. Just enjoying the work, Tommy. There's something satisfying about building things the right way. That evening, I got a visit from Rick. He showed up at my door with a six-pack and a knowing grin. Heard there was some excitement downtown last night, he said, settling into my living room chair. Really? I wouldn't know. I was home all evening. Course you were. Just like you were home the night someone left sugar in a certain Porsche's gas tank. I opened 2 beers and handed him one. Rick, I have no idea what you're talking about. Jake, I spent 20 years investigating crimes. I know the difference between random vandalism and personal revenge. Random vandals don't leave philosophical notes. Hypothetically speaking, I said, what would you think of someone who fought back when their world was being destroyed? Rick took a long drink of beer. Hypothetically, I'd think they were finally growing a spine, but I'd also warn them to be smart about it. Revenge is like construction work. You need a plan, the right tools, and you need to know when to stop. And if someone didn't want to stop, then they better make sure they don't get caught. The next few days were interesting. Mark had to rent a car while his Porsche was being repaired. Lena seemed nervous, constantly checking her phone and looking over her shoulder. Emma actually spoke to me at dinner, asking if I was okay. You seem different, Dad, she said, twirling spaghetti on her fork. Different how? I don't know. More focused, I guess. Lena shot me a sharp look across the table. Your father's been under a lot of stress lately. We all have, I replied, meeting her gaze. But stress can be motivating. It helps you figure out what really matters. That night, Lena confronted me in our bedroom. I know you vandalized Mark's car. Do you? Can you prove it? Jake, this has to stop. Whatever you think you're accomplishing. I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm just a simple construction worker, remember? Too dumb to pull off something like that. She stared at me for a long moment. You're different. This isn't like you. Maybe you never really knew me? Or maybe you're becoming someone I don't want to know. I shrugged. That makes 2 of us. The war was just beginning, and I was learning that I had a talent for it. 15 years of marriage had taught me all of Lena's weaknesses, her fears, her pressure points. She'd spent months systematically destroying our relationship. Now it was my turn to build something, not a house or a cabinet or a deck, a reckoning. 2 weeks after the Porsche incident, Lena announced she was attending the Maine Architecture Awards Gala downtown. A networking event, she called it. Professional obligation. She'd be home late. Will Mark be there? I asked over breakfast, watching her apply lipstick with more care than usual. Probably. Most of the real estate developers attend. Sounds like fun. Maybe I should come with you. The lipstick paused halfway to her mouth. Jake, it's really not your kind of event. Very formal, lots of industry talk. Right. Wouldn't want the construction worker embarrassing you in front of your colleagues. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? She finished her makeup in silence while I read the newspaper, or pretended to. Actually, I was planning. That evening, I put on my best suit, the navy one I'd worn to Emma's graduation, and drove downtown to the Eastland Park Hotel. The same hotel where Lena and Mark had been conducting their business meetings. The gala was in full swing when I arrived. Portland's architectural elite mingled in the grand ballroom, champagne glasses catching the light from crystal chandeliers. I spotted Lena immediately, stunning in a black dress I'd never seen before, standing close to Mark near the bar, too close. I grabbed a drink from a passing waiter and made my way through the crowd. Several people nodded politely, recognizing me as Lena Morrison's husband, though few knew my name. I was used to being invisible at these events. Tonight, that was about to change. Jake? Lena's voice was pitched too high when she saw me approaching. What a surprise. I thought you were staying home. Changed my mind. Figured I should support my wife's career. I extended my hand to Mark. Mark Stevens, right? I'm Jake Morrison. Mark's handshake was firm, his smile confident. The husband. Lena's told me so much about you. Funny, she's barely mentioned you at all. The smile flickered slightly. Lena jumped in quickly. Mark's been instrumental in several of our recent projects. The Harbor District development, the waterfront condos. Those are beautiful buildings, I said. I actually did some of the foundation work on the Harbor District. Probably walked right over my concrete without knowing it. Jake builds things, Lena said to Mark, as if I weren't standing right there. Very hands-on work. The condescension in her voice was subtle, but unmistakable. Mark chuckled. Must be nice working with your hands all day. Very authentic. The word dripped with privilege. I smiled back. It is. There's something satisfying about creating something solid, something that lasts. Of course, I also know how to tear things down when they're not built right. Mark's eyes narrowed slightly. I'm sure you do. Jake, Lena interjected, Why don't you get yourself another drink? Mark and I need to discuss the Riverside project. Actually, I'd love to hear about that. Always interested in my wife's work. For the next 20 minutes, I stood there listening to them discuss architectural details while standing closer than any business partners should. Mark's hand brushed Lena's arm. She laughed at his jokes too loudly. They shared inside references and meaningful glances. Finally, Mark excused himself to talk to other clients. As soon as he was gone, Lena turned on me. What are you doing here? Supporting my wife. Isn't that what husbands do? Jake, please don't make a scene. A scene? Like calling me your starter husband in front of our family? Her face flushed. Keep your voice down. Or what? You'll be embarrassed? Good. I walked away, leaving her standing there. But I didn't leave the hotel. Instead, I made my way to the parking garage where Mark's rental car was parked. A nice BMW, probably costing more per day than most people made in a week. This time, I was more creative. No permanent damage, but definitely memorable. I used my phone to take photos of the license plate, then called in a tip to the police about a suspicious vehicle matching the description of one used in a recent break-in. Not enough to get him arrested, but enough to ruin his evening. Then I went home and waited. Lena didn't return until almost 2 a.m. I was sitting in the living room, reading a book on home renovation, when she walked in. Where were you? She demanded. Here. Where were you? At the gala, obviously, and then helping Mark deal with the police. Police? What happened? Someone called in a false report about his car. He spent 2 hours at the station getting it sorted out. That's terrible. Crime is really getting out of hand in this city. She stared at me suspiciously. Jake, if you're behind this... Behind what? I was here all evening. Ask Emma. Emma's at her friend's house. Then I guess you'll have to take my word for it. The next morning, I was installing a bathroom vanity when my phone rang. Rick's number. You need to see something, he said without preamble. An hour later, I was back at Sunset Bowling, sitting in Rick's office while he showed me his laptop screen. Security footage from downtown last night, he said. A friend of mine at the department owed me a favor. The black and white video showed Mark and Lena leaving the hotel together, his arm around her waist. They walked to his rental car, where they kissed for a long time before she got into her own vehicle. Thought you might want evidence, Rick said quietly. For what? Divorce court. This kind of thing matters when it comes to asset division. I studied the screen, watching my wife betray me in grainy detail. What if I don't want a divorce? Jake, she's cheating on you, in public, with her business partner. What else is there? There's making sure she understands the consequences. Rick leaned back in his chair. That's a dangerous road, my friend. Maybe, but it's my road to walk. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. I created several fake email accounts and began researching Lena's firm, her clients, her professional reputation. If she wanted to humiliate me publicly, I could return the favor. The first email went to her boss, James Crawford, a stuffy traditionalist who prided himself on running an ethical firm. It contained the hotel receipts and a carefully worded question about company policy regarding personal relationships that might compromise professional judgment. The second went to her biggest client, Mrs. Patterson, an elderly widow who was paying Lena's firm to design her dream retirement home. Mrs. Patterson was old-fashioned, religious, and had specifically requested a married female architect because she believed in family values. The third went to the local architecture review board, questioning whether personal relationships between architects and developers might constitute conflicts of interest on certain projects. I sent them anonymously, from different accounts, spaced over several days, each one professional, factual, and devastating. Within a week, Lena was called into meetings with her boss, her client, and the review board. She came home each evening progressively more stressed, snapping at Emma and barely speaking to me. Someone's sabotaging me, she said during dinner on Friday night. What do you mean? Emma asked. Someone's been sending emails about me to my clients and colleagues, spreading rumors. What kind of rumors? I asked innocently. Personal things, private things. Someone's trying to destroy my reputation. That's awful, I said. Any idea who might want to hurt you professionally? She looked directly at me. I have my suspicions. Well, I hope you figure it out. Your career means everything to you. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. That night, as Lena made frantic phone calls to Mark about damage control, I sat in my workshop in the basement, planning my next move. I had tools down there for every kind of job. Hammers for demolition, saws for cutting, sanders for smoothing rough edges. But the most important tool for this job was patience. Lena thought she was dealing with the same passive husband who'd tolerated years of subtle disrespect and growing distance. She was wrong. She was dealing with someone who understood that the best revenge, like the best construction work, required careful planning, quality materials, and perfect execution. And I was just getting started. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in late October. I was having coffee in the kitchen when Emma stormed downstairs, her phone clutched in her hand and tears streaming down her face. "Dad, you need to see this," she said, thrusting the device at me. The screen showed her TikTok account. The latest video had been viewed over 50,000 times in 12 hours. It was titled, "When Your Dad Becomes Toxic," and showed Emma crying into the camera while dramatic music played. "My father has completely lost it," she said in the video. "He's stalking my mom, harassing her colleagues, and making our whole family look crazy. I can't even show my face at school anymore because everyone's talking about us." The comments below were brutal. Hundreds of teenagers calling me everything from psycho dad to midlife crisis loser. Several suggested Emma should call social services. "Emma," I said carefully, "why would you post this?" "Because it's true. Mom told me about the emails, about Mark's car, about everything you've been doing. You're destroying our family." "I'm destroying our family?" The coffee mug cracked in my grip. "Your mother is having an affair, and I'm the problem?" At least she's not acting like a crazy person. Before I could respond, Lena appeared in the kitchen doorway, fully dressed for work. She glanced at Emma's phone, then at me. "Emma, go get ready for school," she said quietly. "But Mom?" "Now." After Emma left, Lena poured herself coffee with steady hands. 50,000 views, she said without looking at me. "Congratulations. Your daughter's social media famous." "This has to stop, Jake." "Which part? Your affair or my reaction to it?" "All of it. We're destroying each other, and Emma's caught in the middle." I stood up slowly, pieces of the broken mug falling to the floor. "You started this war, Lena. You called me your starter husband. You've been cheating for months. You've been lying to our daughter, to our friends, to everyone. And you've been acting like a maniac. Have I? Let's see. I found out my wife was cheating, so I responded. Your boyfriend's car got vandalized by an unknown person. Some anonymous tips were sent to your colleagues about potential ethical issues. Hardly the behavior of a maniac. You can't prove I did any of those things," I continued, "but I can prove what you've been doing. I have photos, emails, hotel receipts, witness statements." Her face went pale. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand what it feels like to have your world torn down around you." That evening, I made a decision that crossed every line I'd drawn for myself. I drove to Mark's apartment building and waited in the parking garage. When he arrived at 7:30, I was leaning against his repaired Porsche. "Jake Morrison," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "This is unexpected. We need to talk." "I don't think that's a good idea." "I think it's a great idea. Unless you'd prefer I have this conversation with your ex-wife instead. I understand she's still pretty bitter about the divorce settlement." Mark's confident facade cracked slightly. "What do you want?" "I want to understand something. What's your end game here? You destroy my marriage, steal my wife, and then what? You live happily ever after?" "Nobody stole anything. Lena made her own choices." "Did she? Or did you manipulate a woman going through a midlife crisis?" "Look, Jake, I'm sorry you're hurt, but—" "I'm not hurt," I interrupted. "I'm angry. There's a difference." Mark straightened his tie, trying to regain his composure. "What do you want me to do? End things with Lena?" "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You chose to get involved with a married woman. That choice affects real people. It affects Emma. Emma will adjust. Kids are resilient." The casual way he dismissed my daughter's pain was the final straw. I stepped closer. "Let me explain something to you, Mark. I build things for a living. Houses, buildings, foundations. But I also tear things down when they are not built right. And your relationship with my wife? It's not built right. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. See, you think you're dealing with some blue-collar guy who's going to roll over and accept this? But you're wrong. I'm dealing with someone who destroyed my family, and I have nothing left to lose." I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken earlier that day, Mark's business office, taken from across the street with a telephoto lens. "Nice building. I actually know the contractor who built it. Interesting guy. He told me all about the shortcuts they took during construction, the code violations that got covered up, the bribes that were paid to inspectors." Mark's face went white. "You're bluffing." "Am I? You want to bet your business license on that?" I put the phone away and stepped back. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to end things with Lena, cleanly, professionally, and you're going to stay away from my family. And if I don't, then you'll find out just how creative a construction worker can be when he puts his mind to it. I walked away, leaving Mark standing alone in the parking garage. But I wasn't done, not even close. The next morning, I called in sick again and drove to Emma's school. I found her at lunch, sitting alone while her friends whispered and pointed from other tables. "Dad, what are you doing here? We need to talk." I led her to my truck in the parking lot, where we could have privacy. "Emma, I know you think I've lost my mind. Haven't you? Maybe. But I need you to understand something. Your mother and I are getting divorced. That's not your fault, and it's not something you can fix. But if you just stopped acting crazy... Your mother was cheating on me long before I started acting crazy. She made choices that destroyed our marriage. I'm just responding to those choices." Emma stared out the windshield. "I hate this." "I know. I hate it too. But sometimes things have to get worse before they can get better." "Will they get better?" I looked at my daughter, 17 years old, and caught between two parents who were tearing each other apart. "I don't know, sweetheart. But I promise you this. Whatever happens, I love you. That will never change." That afternoon, I received a call from James Crawford, Lena's boss. "Mr. Morrison, I think we need to meet." An hour later, I was sitting in his downtown office, surrounded by architectural awards and photos of successful projects. "I've been receiving some disturbing emails," Crawford said, studying me over his reading glasses. "What kind of emails?" "Anonymous tips about one of my employees, about potential conflicts of interest and ethical violations." "That sounds serious." "It is, especially since the person being accused is your wife." I leaned back in the leather chair. "Mr. Crawford, are you asking if I sent those emails?" "I'm asking if you have any information that might help me understand what's going on." I pulled out a folder I'd prepared and placed it on his desk. "Everything you need is in there. Hotel receipts, email printouts, photos. All documented, all factual." Crawford opened the folder and spent several minutes reviewing the contents. His expression grew more grave with each page. "This is quite comprehensive," he said finally. I'm thorough in my work." "Mr. Morrison, I understand you're going through a difficult time, but using this information to damage your wife's career..." "I'm not damaging anything. I'm providing facts. What you do with those facts is up to you." Crawford closed the folder. "Lena is a talented architect. It would be a shame to see her career destroyed over personal issues." "It would be a shame," I agreed. "But actions have consequences, even for talented architects." That evening, Lena came home 2 hours early, her face streaked with tears and her hands shaking. "James put me on administrative leave," she said without preamble. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Pending a full investigation into my professional conduct." "That sounds serious. Jake, please, I'll end things with Mark. I'll do whatever you want. Just stop this." I looked at my wife of 15 years, the woman who'd called me her starter husband, who'd been cheating for months, who'd been planning to leave me anyway. "It's too late for that, Lena." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you wanted a villain. You got one, and villains don't stop until the job is finished." The war had escalated beyond anything I'd originally planned, but as I sat in my basement workshop that night, surrounded by the tools of my trade, I realized something important. I was good at this, and I was just getting started. The final phase began on a cold November morning when I discovered Lena and Mark's real plan. Hidden in her laptop, buried in a folder marked Riverside Project, I found documents that made my previous discoveries look like love letters. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to steal my business. The documents outlined a scheme where Mark would purchase several properties requiring major renovation work, then hire Morrison Construction for the jobs. But the contracts were structured to bankrupt me through cost overruns and delayed payments, while Lena would use her architectural connections to ensure I couldn't get other work. Once I was financially ruined, they'd swoop in to buy my equipment and client list for pennies on the dollar. Then Lena would divorce me, claiming I was an unstable failure, and take half of what little remained. It was brilliant, thorough, and absolutely ruthless. I printed everything. That afternoon, I called a meeting with my crew at the job site. Tommy, Luis, Big Mike, and Dave had worked for me for years. They deserved to know what was coming. "Boys, we need to talk," I said, gathering them around my truck during lunch break. I explained the situation without going into personal details. Someone was trying to destroy the company through fraudulent contracts and market manipulation. We might have to shut down temporarily while I dealt with it. "That's messed up, boss," Tommy said. "What can we do?" Nothing legal, I replied, but I appreciate the loyalty. Big Mike cracked his knuckles. Maybe nothing legal ain't the worst idea. Mike, I appreciate the sentiment, but this is my fight. I just wanted you guys to know what was happening so you could start looking for other work. Screw that, Dave said. You gave me a job when nobody else would hire an ex-con. Whatever you need, boss. The loyalty was touching, but this was something I had to handle alone. That evening, I implemented the final phase of my plan. First, I called every contractor, supplier, and client in my network. I told them about the scheme to destroy my business, providing documentation as proof. By morning, Mark Stevens would find himself persona non grata in Portland's construction industry. Second, I sent a comprehensive package to the Maine Real Estate Commission, detailing Mark's unethical business practices and providing evidence of his attempts to manipulate the market. Third, I contacted a journalist friend from high school who now worked for the Portland Press-Herald. Sarah had always been interested in stories about corruption and abuse of power. Jake Morrison, she said when she answered the phone. Haven't heard from you in years. Sarah, I have a story for you. Real estate corruption, adultery, business fraud, and a construction worker fighting back. Sounds like a made-for-TV movie. How solid is your evidence? Rock solid. Documents, photos, witnesses, everything you need. Send it over. If it's as good as you say, it'll be front-page material. The fourth and most personal step involved Emma. I drove to her school and found her in the library, studying for her SATs. Dad, I can't talk right now. I'm behind on everything because of all this drama. Emma, I need to show you something about your mother and Mark. I handed her a simplified version of the business documents, focusing on the parts that would affect her college fund and our family's financial future. She read in silence, her face growing pale. They were going to steal your business? They were going to destroy it, then buy the pieces cheap. But that would have ruined us. My college money, the house, everything. Everything, I confirmed. Emma stared at the papers. Mom knows about this? She helped plan it. For the first time since this whole mess began, my daughter looked at me with something other than disappointment or anger. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You couldn't have known. They're very good at hiding their real intentions. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. Fight back properly. That night, Lena came home to find me sitting in the living room with divorce papers, bank statements, and a thick folder of evidence. We need to talk, I said. She sat down across from me, her face resigned. Jake, I know you're angry. I'm not angry anymore. Anger was 3 months ago. Now I'm just thorough. I handed her the business documents. She read them, her face cycling through surprise, fear, and finally, defeat. Where did you get these? Your laptop. Emma's birthday plus your initials, remember? You really should change your passwords more often. Jake, I can explain. No need. It's all very clear. You and Mark weren't just having an affair. You were planning to destroy my livelihood, steal my business, and leave me with nothing. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. How was it supposed to happen? You'd ruin me financially, then divorce me and take half of nothing. Very considerate. Lena's composure finally cracked. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The firm is struggling. Mark offered solutions. Mark offered to help you steal from your husband. It wasn't stealing. It was business. It was theft, fraud, conspiracy, and it was personal. I pulled out my phone and showed her the Press-Herald's website. The story was already online. Local developer and architect accused of business fraud scheme. Sarah did a great job with the article, I said conversationally. Very thorough. She interviewed several of Mark's previous business partners. Interesting pattern of behavior. Lena's face went white. You went to the press? I went everywhere. The Real Estate Commission, the Architecture Review Board, the Better Business Bureau. I even sent copies to Mark's ex-wife's lawyer. Apparently she's very interested in reopening their divorce settlement. Jake, you can't do this. You'll destroy both of us. I'm not destroying anything. I'm revealing what was already there. The next morning brought chaos. Lena's phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, colleagues, and clients. Mark showed up at our door at 7 a.m., his usual confidence replaced by panic. You need to call off your dogs, he said when I answered. My dogs? The press, the regulatory boards, everyone you've sicked on us. I didn't sick anyone on you. I just provided information to interested parties. My business is ruined. Lena's career is over. Are you happy now? I considered the question seriously. You know what? I think I am. Mark stepped closer, his face flushed with anger. You pathetic little man. You think you've won something here. I think I've evened the score. You've destroyed everything, including your own family. My family was already destroyed. I'm just making sure everyone knows who did it. Mark raised his hand as if to hit me, then seemed to remember where he was. This isn't over. Yes, it is. That afternoon, Emma came home from school with a different energy. She deleted the TikTok video and posted a new one explaining that she'd been manipulated and apologizing to me publicly. Dad, I owe you an apology. No, you don't. You were protecting your mother. That's what good daughters do. Even when their mothers are wrong? Especially then. Lena spent the day at her lawyer's office trying to figure out damage control. When she came home that evening, she looked like she'd aged 10 years. The firm let me go, she said quietly. I'm sorry. Are you? I'm sorry it came to this. I'm not sorry you're facing consequences for your choices. Jake, we have to figure out how to move forward, for Emma's sake. We do. Here's how it works. You move out, we get divorced, you and Mark deal with the legal and professional consequences of your actions. I rebuild my life and my relationship with our daughter. And if I fight you on the divorce, I handed her another folder. Then all of this becomes public record in court proceedings. Every hotel receipt, every email, every detail of your business fraud scheme. Is that really what you want? She took the folder with shaking hands. When did you become so cruel? When you called me your starter husband, when you decided I was disposable, when you tried to steal my business and destroy my life. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far, and now we all have to live with the consequences. 3 days later, Lena moved out of our house and into a small apartment across town. Mark's real estate license was suspended pending investigation. The Press-Herald ran a follow-up story about corruption in Portland's development industry. I sat in my basement workshop that evening, surrounded by the tools I'd used to build my life and career, the same tools I'd used to tear down the people who'd tried to destroy me. Emma knocked on the door around 9 p.m. Dad, can we talk? Always. She sat on my workbench, her legs swinging like when she was little. Are you proud of what you did? It was a fair question. I'm proud that I fought back. I'm proud that I didn't let them destroy me without consequences. Am I proud of how far it went? That's more complicated. Do you think you went too far? I looked at my daughter, almost 18 now, preparing to leave for college and start her own adult life. Emma, your mother and Mark made choices that would have destroyed our family financially and emotionally. They planned it carefully and executed it ruthlessly, I responded in kind. But you became someone different, someone harder. Yes, I did. Sometimes life forces you to become someone different. Do you regret it? I thought about the question for a long time, about the man I'd been 6 months ago and the man I was now, about the marriage I'd lost and the self-respect I'd gained. I regret that it was necessary, I said finally. But I don't regret doing what was necessary, Emma nodded slowly. I think I understand. What do you understand? That sometimes good people have to do bad things to protect themselves from worse people. That's a very adult way of looking at it. I guess I had to grow up fast. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, surrounded by the tools and materials of honest work. Outside, winter was coming to Maine, but inside my workshop, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The war was over. I'd won, but the victory had cost me my marriage, my innocence, and probably a piece of my soul. But I'd kept my business, my home, and my daughter's respect. In the end, that had to be enough. Because sometimes when people push you far enough, you don't just push back, you push them over the edge. And you make sure they remember the fall.